Chapter 17. Arrival of Candide and his valet at El Dorado, and what they saw there. You see, said Cacambo to Candide, as soon as they had reached the frontiers of the Islands, that this hemisphere is not better than the others. Take my word for it. Let us go back to Europe by the shortest way. How go back? Said Candide, and where shall we go? To my own country? The Bulgarians and the Abaris are slaying all. To Portugal? There I shall be burnt, and if we abide here we are every moment in danger of being spitted. But how can I resolve to quit a part of the world where my dear Cunegonde resides? Let us turn towards Cayenne, said Cacambo. There we shall find Frenchmen, who wander all over the world. They may assist us. God will perhaps have pity on us. It was not easy to get to Cayenne. They knew vaguely in which direction to go, but rivers, precipices, robbers, savages, obstructed them all the way. Their horses died of fatigue. Their provisions were consumed. They fed a whole month upon wild fruits, and found themselves at last near a little river bordered with cocoa trees, which sustained their lives and their hopes. Cacambo, who was as good a counselor as the old woman, said to Candide, "We are able to hold out no longer, we have walked enough. I see an empty canoe near the riverside. Let us fill it with coconuts, throw ourselves into it, and go with the current. A river always leads to some inhabited spot. If we do not find pleasant things we shall at least find new things." "With all my heart," said Candide, "let us recommend ourselves to Providence." They rowed a few leagues, between banks, in some places flowery, in others barren, in some parts smooth, in others rugged. The stream ever widened, and at length lost itself under an arch of frightful rocks which reached to the sky. The two travelers had the courage to commit themselves to the current. The river, suddenly contracting at this place, whirled them along with a dreadful noise and rapidity. At the end of 24 hours they saw daylight again, but their canoe was dashed to pieces against the rocks. For a league they had to creep from rock to rock, until at length they discovered an extensive plain, bounded by inaccessible mountains. The country was cultivated, pg 76, as much for pleasure as for necessity. On all sides the useful was also the beautiful. The roads were covered, or rather adorned, with carriages of a glittering form and substance, in which were men and women of surprising beauty, drawn by large red sheep which surpassed in fleetness the finest coursers of Andalusia, Tetuan, and Maquinez. "Here, however, is a country," said Candide, "which is better than Westphalia." He stepped out with Cacambo towards the first village which he saw. Some children dressed in tattered brocades played at quoits on the outskirts. Our travelers from the other world amused themselves by looking on. The quoits were large round pieces, yellow, red, and green, which cast a singular luster. The travelers picked a few of them off the ground. This was of gold, that of emeralds, the other of rubies. The least of them would have been the greatest ornament on the Mogul's throne. "Without doubt," said Cacambo, "these children must be the king's sons that are playing at quoits." The village schoolmaster appeared at this moment and called them to school. "There," said Candide, "is the preceptor of the royal family." The little truants immediately quitted their game, leaving the quoits on the ground with all their other playthings. Candide gathered them up, ran to the master, and presented them to him in a most humble manner, giving him to understand by signs that their royal highnesses had forgotten their gold and jewels. The schoolmaster, smiling, flung them upon the ground, then, looking at Candide with a good deal of surprise, went about his business. The travelers, however, took care to gather up the gold, the rubies, and the emeralds. "Where are we?" cried Candide. "The king's children in this country must be well brought up, since they are taught to despise gold and precious stones." Cacambo was as much surprised as Candide. At length they drew near the first house in the village. It was built like an European palace. A crowd of people pressed about the door, and there were still more in the house. They heard most agreeable music, and were aware of a delicious odor of cooking. Cacambo went up to the door and heard they were talking Peruvian. It was his mother tongue, for it is well known that Cacambo was born in Tucumán, in a village where no other language was spoken. "I will be your interpreter here," said he to Candide. "Let us go in, it is a public house." Immediately 2 waiters and 2 girls, pg 78, dressed in cloth of gold, and their hair tied up with ribbons, invited them to sit down to table with the landlord. They served 4 dishes of soup, each garnished with 2 young parrots, a boiled condor, 19, which weighed 200 pounds, 2 roasted monkeys, of excellent flavor, 300 hummingbirds in one dish, and 600 fly birds in another, exquisite ragouts, delicious pastries, the whole served up in dishes of a kind of rock crystal. The waiters and girls poured out several liqueurs drawn from the sugar cane. Most of the company were chapmen and wagoners, all extremely polite. They asked Cacambo a few questions with the greatest circumspection, and answered his in the most obliging manner. As soon as dinner was over, Cacambo believed as well as Candide that they might well pay their reckoning by laying down 2 of those large gold pieces which they had picked up. The landlord and landlady shouted with laughter and held their sides. When the fit was over, "Gentlemen," said the landlord, "it is plain you are strangers, and such guests we are not accustomed to see. Pardon us therefore for laughing when you offered us the pebbles from our highroads in payment of your reckoning. You doubtless have not the money of the country, but it is not necessary to have any money at all to dine in this house. All hostelries established for the convenience of commerce are paid by the government. You have fared but very indifferently because this is a poor village, but everywhere else, you will be received as you deserve." Cacambo explained this whole discourse with great astonishment to Candide, who was as greatly astonished to hear it. "What sort of a country then is this?" said they to one another. "A country unknown to all the rest of the world, and where nature is of a kind so different from ours? It is probably the country where all is well, for there absolutely must be one such place. And, whatever Master Pangloss might say, I often found that things went very ill in Westphalia." Chapter 18. What they saw in the country of El Dorado. Cacambo expressed his curiosity to the landlord, who made answer, "I am very ignorant, but not the worse on that account. However, we have in this neighborhood an old man retired from court who is the most learned and most communicative person in the kingdom." At once he took Cacambo to the old man. Candide acted now only a second character, and accompanied his valet. They entered a very plain house, for the door was only of silver, and the ceilings were only of gold, but wrought in so elegant a taste as to vie with the richest. The antechamber, indeed, was only encrusted with rubies and emeralds, but the order in which everything was arranged made amends for this great simplicity. The old man received the strangers on his sofa, which was stuffed with hummingbirds' feathers, and ordered his servants to present them with liqueurs in diamond goblets, after pg 81, which he satisfied their curiosity in the following terms: "I am now 172 years old, and I learned of my late father, master of the horse to the king, the amazing revolutions of Peru, of which he had been an eyewitness. The kingdom we now inhabit is the ancient country of the Incas, who quitted it very imprudently to conquer another part of the world, and were at length destroyed by the Spaniards. More wise by far were the princes of their family, who remained in their native country, and they ordained, with the consent of the whole nation, that none of the inhabitants should ever be permitted to quit this little kingdom, and this has preserved our innocence and happiness. The Spaniards have had a confused notion of this country, and have called it El Dorado, and an Englishman, whose name was Sir Walter Raleigh, came very near it about 100 years ago, but being surrounded by inaccessible rocks and precipices, we have hitherto been sheltered from the rapaciousness of European nations, who have an inconceivable passion for the pebbles and dirt of our land, for the sake of which they would murder us to the last man." The conversation was long. It turned chiefly on their form of government, their manners, pg 82, their women, their public entertainments, and the arts. At length Candide, having always had a taste for metaphysics, made Cacambo ask whether there was any religion in that country. The old man reddened a little. "How then," said he, "can you doubt it? Do you take us for ungrateful wretches?" Cacambo humbly asked, "What was the religion in El Dorado?" The old man reddened again. "Can there be 2 religions?" said he. "We have, I believe, the religion of all the world. We worship God night and morning." "Do you worship but one God?" said Cacambo, who still acted as interpreter in representing Candide's doubts. "Surely," said the old man, "there are not 2, nor 3, nor 4. I must confess the people from your side of the world ask very extraordinary questions." Candide was not yet tired of interrogating the good old man. He wanted to know in what manner they prayed to God in El Dorado. "We do not pray to him," said the worthy sage. "We have nothing to ask of him. He has given us all we need, and we return him thanks without ceasing." Candide, having a curiosity to see the priests, pg 83, asked where they were. The good old man smiled. "My friend," said he, "we are all priests. The king and all the heads of families sing solemn canticles of thanksgiving every morning, accompanied by 5,000 or 6,000 musicians. What, have you no monks who teach, who dispute, who govern, who cabal, and who burn people that are not of their opinion?" "We must be mad, indeed, if that were the case," said the old man. "Here we are all of one opinion, and we know not what you mean by monks." During this whole discourse Candide was in raptures, and he said to himself, "This is vastly different from Westphalia and the Baron's castle. Had our friend Pangloss seen El Dorado, he would no longer have said that the castle of Thunder Ten Tronc was the finest upon earth. It is evident that one must travel. After this long conversation, the old man ordered a coach and 6 sheep to be got ready, and 12 of his domestics to conduct the travelers to court. "Excuse me," said he, "if my age deprives me of the honor of accompanying you. The king will receive you in a manner that cannot displease you, and no doubt you will make, pg 84, an allowance for the customs of the country, if some things should not be to your liking." Candide and Cacambo got into the coach, the 6 sheep flew, and in less than 4 hours they reached the king's palace situated at the extremity of the capital. The portal was 220 feet high, and 100 wide, but words are wanting to express the materials of which it was built. It is plain such materials must have prodigious superiority over those pebbles and sand which we call gold and precious stones. 20 beautiful damsels of the king's guard received Candide and Cacambo as they alighted from the coach, conducted them to the bath, and dressed them in robes woven of the down of hummingbirds, after which the great crown officers, of both sexes, led them to the king's apartment, between 2 files of musicians, 1,000 on each side. When they drew near to the audience chamber, Cacambo asked one of the great officers in what way he should pay his obeisance to his majesty, whether they should throw themselves upon their knees or on their stomachs, whether they should put their hands upon their heads or behind their backs, whether they should lick the dust off the floor, in a word, what was the ceremony. "The custom," said the great officer, "is to, pg 85, embrace the king, and to kiss him on each cheek." Candide and Cacambo threw themselves round his majesty's neck. He received them with all the goodness imaginable, and politely invited them to supper. While waiting they were shown the city, and saw the public edifices raised as high as the clouds, the marketplaces ornamented with 1,000 columns, the fountains of spring water, those of rose water, those of liqueurs drawn from sugar cane, incessantly flowing into the great squares, which were paved with a kind of precious stone, which gave off a delicious fragrancy like that of cloves and cinnamon. Candide asked to see the court of justice, the parliament. They told him they had none, and that they were strangers to lawsuits. He asked if they had any prisons, and they answered no. But what surprised him most and gave him the greatest pleasure was the Palace of Sciences, where he saw a gallery 2,000 feet long, and filled with instruments employed in mathematics and physics. After rambling about the city the whole afternoon, and seeing but 1,000th part of it, they were reconducted to the royal palace, where Candide sat down to table with his majesty, his valet Cacambo, and several ladies. Never was there a better entertainment, and never was more wit shown at a table than that which fell from his majesty. Cacambo explained the king's bon mot to Candide, and notwithstanding they were translated they still appeared to be bon mots. Of all the things that surprised Candide this was not the least. They spent a month in this hospitable place. Candide frequently said to Cacambo, "I own, my friend, once more that the castle where I was born is nothing in comparison with this, but, after all, Miss Cunegonde is not here, and you have, without doubt, some mistress in Europe. If we abide here we shall only be upon a footing with the rest, whereas, if we return to our old world, only with 12 sheep laden with the pebbles of El Dorado, we shall be richer than all the kings in Europe. We shall have no more inquisitors to fear, and we may easily recover Miss Cunegonde." This speech was agreeable to Cacambo. Mankind are so fond of roving, of making a figure in their own country, and of boasting of what they have seen in their travels, that the 2 happy ones resolved to be no longer so, but to ask his majesty's leave to quit the country. "You are foolish," said the king. "I am sensible that my kingdom is but a small place, but when a person is comfortably settled in any part he should abide there. I have not the right to detain strangers. It is a tyranny which neither our manners nor our laws permit. All men are free. Go when you wish, but the going will be very difficult. It is impossible to ascend that rapid river on which you came as by a miracle, and which runs under vaulted rocks. The mountains which surround my kingdom are 10,000 feet high, and as steep as walls. They are each over 10 leagues in breadth, and there is no other way to descend them than by precipices. However, since you absolutely wish to depart, I shall give orders to my engineers to construct a machine that will convey you very safely. When we have conducted you over the mountains no one can accompany you further, for my subjects have made a vow never to quit the kingdom, and they are too wise to break it. Ask me besides anything that you please." "We desire nothing of your majesty," says Candide, "but a few sheep laden with provisions, pebbles, and the earth of this country." The king laughed. "I cannot conceive," said he, "what pleasure you Europeans find in our yellow clay, but take as much as you like, and great good may it do you." At once he gave directions that his engineers should construct a machine to hoist up these 2 extraordinary men out of the kingdom. 3,000 good mathematicians went to work. It was ready in 15 days, and did not cost more than 20 million sterling in the specie of that country. They placed Candide and Cacambo on the machine. There were 2 great red sheep saddled and bridled to ride upon as soon as they were beyond the mountains, 20 pack sheep laden with provisions, 30 with presents of the curiosities of the country, and 50 with gold, diamonds, and precious stones. The king embraced the 2 wanderers very tenderly. Their departure, with the ingenious manner in which they and their sheep were hoisted over the mountains, was a splendid spectacle. The mathematicians took their leave after conveying them to a place of safety, and Candide had no other desire, no other aim, than to present his sheep to Miss Cunegonde. "Now," said he, "we are able to pay the governor of Buenos Aires if Miss Cunegonde can be ransomed. Let us journey towards Cayenne. Let us embark, and we will afterwards see what kingdom we shall be able to purchase."
Thank you for listening to that. I'm not sure how I feel about using AI to tell such a wonderful story like Candide, and I hope to be able to re-record it in my own voice down the road. Unfortunately, the original recording was somehow messed up, and lots of background noise of air purifiers and stuff. So I may try to re-record it in my own voice, but for now, I'm just going to let you have the option, the AI version or the one with the poor sound quality, but a real person. So there you go. And we still have the same questions at the end if you'd like to look at those and get inspired before you make comments. See you next time.